Well, hello everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Jennifer Nicole Campbell here, and I have a very special guest with me today. We're going to be talking about creativity and composition in time of coronavirus. So this is one of my wonderful composition students, Joshua Dix. Josh, welcome.
Hi.
So we're very excited to be on this channel. We are always talking about enlightening life through music. Now, Joshua's been studying with me for about a year now, and we've been having more lessons, I guess, over the past few months. And Josh, you want to just share a little bit about how you got interested in composing, and
Yeah, I actually started, I got more interested in composing before I even started taking piano lessons. Music in my household started with my brother when he was younger. He started taking piano lessons, and so I would see him playing the piano, and I would see the music that he's reading to play the piano, and it's obviously simple, basic stuff when you're first starting off on the piano, and I was looking at the notes, and I don't know, I just didn't like the way that they were telling me what to do, so it was more of oh, well, if they can put notes on a page in that way, I could probably do the same thing. So that's what I would do, and I would rearrange the notes and kind of make up my own things, and it wasn't anything special, but it was definitely more fun, and then that led me to start taking piano lessons, and I kind of didn't really pursue or push towards composition in any way for a while, until my music teacher started talking about music theory more and more as I got later into my piano career. And so music theory was more, I found it more interesting than piano performance because it was everything behind it. It was the physics of piano. It was the kind of secret stuff that makes, the music that we play so good. And that was super interesting. So really, it was an education in music theory that got me super interested in composition, and now that's my main focus. That's really what I want to do.
that's interesting. And I think that's not always often the case. Like a lot of young composers, I think they start out by they just like to improvise, and they might not even be interested in the music theory aspect. So that's an interesting thing, and we like to talk about that kind of musical structure and things like that. And it's kind of like studying writing a little bit, wouldn't you say? Because you're studying the mechanics of words and how they interact together.
Well, that's exactly, music is a language, so it really is knowing, the backbone of a certain language, just like it would be for writing. And that's a good point about, improvisation, because, it's always fun to just sit down on the piano and come up with something, but I find that an education in music theory allows you to really come up, while you're improvising, even during the improvisation stage, you are coming up with more, depth in what you're playing, and I found that to be really drawing for composition.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Now, we've been working, I guess, I first started working with you with the Brandywine River Museum Young Composers Workshop last year, and we're going to play a clip here of Josh's composition, Snow Hill, but maybe just talk a little bit about, I've always been interested in the connection between paintings and music, right? So I remember you said recently that you've always kind of been interested in that as well. So maybe talk a little bit to that if you can.
Oh, absolutely. I think music is so important in the world of multimedia. I think it has functions outside of just simply a concert hall. I think that music as an art form goes together with not only paintings as an art form, but any kind of visual stimulus. That's personally, I'm trying to strive towards film composition, and I'm so drawn towards film composition specifically, as opposed to simply modern contemporary classical composition, because with film composition, the music not only helps tell the story, but it has psychological purpose in that in that film.
Yeah.
So you're affecting your audience's brains by telling a story that's being told by the film. So that goes with paintings too, because a painting is telling a story, and you can do the same thing with music. While visual art decorates space, music decorates time. And so you're just getting both of those aspects to create a really multimedia full experience for the listener.
Yeah, that's great. When we think about the power of music, think about, mean, immediately you think of Jaws, and it's infused in all kinds of different cultural things, and commercials, and even movies. Things are referenced. I think there you go. It's just a half step, but it's
For the Jaws theme in a film, that's a musical motive throughout the movie, or a musical theme, psychologically connects the listener or the viewer of the movie to certain aspects of that movie, certain relationships, or certain people. And that's the same thing for visual art, because you have different subjects of a painting, different movements, different things that you can use, themes or motifs in your music to connect your watcher or listener to that painting.
Absolutely, yeah. So let's kind of start talking about what we're actually doing in our lessons. So you started getting in these Dr. Seuss paintings, and I thought that was really cool. And so maybe talk a little bit about what made you think about Dr. Seuss, and what does Dr. Seuss have to do with music, right?
Right. Well, it kind of started because in the whole coronavirus era, we're all just kind of sitting at home, and we're not really
Twilight Zone-ish,
a little bit, yeah. And there's not much going on. We're not really seeing a lot in our, and so it's kind of for artists especially a lack of inspiration. We're not really seeing that kind of like urgency to like represent things that we're seeing in our everyday, because we're not seeing things in our everyday. So with that is that kind of like lack of inspiration. I'm watching different documentaries and seeing different things, and I came across these Dr. Seuss midnight paintings, which in my opinion are really, really, really cool sets of paintings that Dr. Seuss did privately, and he didn't show the public while he was alive, and they were kind of self-portraits of the negative aspects of his character that he recognized. And I think that is so cool, because it's the other side of Dr. Seuss.
Right, the dark side of Dr. Seuss.
The dark side of Dr. Seuss. We always think he's like this light and cheery fellow, but even he himself thought he wasn't. So I thought that was really cool, and I was like, in terms of creating music from paintings, these would be perfect. They are a whole different feeling and emotion that the viewer connects with, especially for Dr. Seuss, a completely different feeling and emotion. And being able to represent that kind of work musically was definitely motivation, and was motivation that I needed to get to the piano during coronavirus times.
Great, yeah. Well, let's take a look at one of these. We're going to take a look at two of these paintings, but the first one we're going to look at was the title "Cat in the Obsolete Shower," right? Which is kind of an interesting thing. So that was your first choice. That was the one we first started working on, right, a few weeks ago. So tell us a little bit about kind of that process and your thoughts.
There's a lot of his paintings to choose from. So I guess that was if you're working with a set, it's hard to kind of be like, I'm going to start with this one. But that painting specifically had depth. There was a lot going on in that painting, but also not a lot going on in that painting. I mean, if you're looking at it, there's not much going on. It's simply this cat figure taking a shower in kind of a grimy building and kind of like a bad environment, but that environment creates a certain tone for the painting that was so interesting to try to manipulate and convey musically. Because while a visual artist can create a vibe and a tone with the set of tools that they have, with their color palette and with their brushstrokes and all that, we have similar tools musically to convey that same tone. So that's kind of what I wanted to work on with that painting specifically, was to create a very specific vibe where the painting it wasn't completely desolate, because you like to imagine that the subject of a painting like this one is thinking about something in that shower, that there's something more going on behind the curtain. And so I used the tools that I have on the piano to create a texture that kind of conveyed that, with certain chords that conveyed melancholy, sadness, but also a sense of hopefulness.
Yeah. Well, do you want to play part of your piece for us? That would be super.
Yeah, and throughout the piece, I'm using more of like a short structure for each of these pieces or these sets of paintings to kind of just create a solid emotion for each one, and I tried to use like a single theme throughout them. And so my single theme throughout this painting was a and that piano melody gets developed and repeated and called back to throughout the piece, while I have a double bass playing this.
It really
Yeah,
it's
this
like the
intense.
background, right? It's kind of like it's this kind of dark, dank background, and then I like the motion. You can almost hear like the drops of the water. It's not like high pressure shower. It's like these little drops, and that to me, the right hand is really good. That you know. So is that
Yeah.
something that you're aware of when you're writing the piece? Because I think that's amazing to think about. Like, did that just come out, or did you look at the painting and think, how am I going to make it sound like water, and how am I going to make it sound like this, or is it more immediate than that?
Well, that's actually a cool thing to analyze for your own music and other people's music, because you can go into the painting knowing that you're going to represent certain parts of the painting in certain ways in your music, or you can create the music while still doing that, but then afterwards notice that certain parts of your music just happen to represent certain parts of the painting. Like, intentionally, I have this interruptory section of the piece where the bass is doing a walking, and that chromatic walking down the piano was created to represent the drips of water coming out of the shower. And so I purposefully use that bass, like that really heavy, intense walking bass line, to represent a certain part of the painting. But then again, there's parts that I didn't purposefully choose to do certain things, but just were successful in representing parts of the painting as well.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and I like it has that kind of really the bass, and eventually we'll maybe hopefully have the whole performance there when we get it live. But imagining the bass playing that and then the piano, and I think it's a really cool combination. You might not think of double bass and piano, and you came up with that. Kudos to you. I would have never thought about that, looking at the painting. But it's a great way you're painting this through music.
Right.
And what's the second painting? It's titled something about a bird flying around, right?
Yeah, yeah. So this is Firebird, another one of Dr. Seuss's midnight paintings. It's definitely, while considering his whole collection of midnight paintings, this definitely resides on the more, like, the happier side, the more hopeful side, even though it is an intense picture with crashing waves and this, like, dark red bird flying through them. It's a cool image, and in terms of my motivation to pick this one specifically, is there's so many different things musically that you can represent in this painting. There is obviously the subject, the Firebird, who you can represent musically through melody lines or registers or certain timbres of certain instruments to kind of represent that bird in your piece. But also the waves really drew me to it, because you have these crashing waves, and to represent kind of the idea of crashing waves musically, it was interesting and probably easier than most people would think, because a lot of the times when we think of things that happen in real life, such as crashing waves, we tend to associate musical ideas to them, like subconsciously.
Yeah. Yeah, the ups and downs that's something that's really cool about music, is that you can convey that, even I mean, it's a simple little 5-finger scale, but it gives the sense of going up and down. And it seems so simple, but it's something to think about. So show us a little bit about some of the waves that you created in this piece.
Right, and now for this one, it is a trio between the double bass, kind of dominating the lower register of the piece, in certain parts of the piece to create a tone once we get to the part of the piece where the waves really do start crashing. We have the piano, which is representing the waves when they're calmer at the beginning of the piece, and then I move towards a more intense crashing feeling. And then I also have a clarinet playing the part of the bird, just really representing the bird's point and the bird's perspective through this whole thing. So while at the beginning of the piece, I have the piano playing more lackadaisy waves, more, kind of introducing it when I have like that kind of idea where the waves are going back and forth, to later,
Calm.
very calm, to later I have the piano playing a more crashing wave, which when we think of a crashing wave, we think of a boom, crash, like that kind of idea. And so I
Right.
kind of represented that in my piano part with a so that kind of idea where you have a boom crash and then a response in the piano part to represent the waves. Meanwhile, the clarinet part is representing the bird slowly and elegantly gliding through those crashing waves, just like you see in the painting. So that's kind of how I decided to represent that painting musically.
That's great. Yeah, and I can't help but wonder that maybe, Dr. Seuss had this kind of dark side that we don't really hear about. Maybe he's kind of like the bird and he's flying above all these, crashing waves and things, think about the psychology. That's always fun to explore. Well, let's talk just a little bit about, maybe some advice you might have or I might have for young composers right now. It's sometimes are dealing with kind of artistic dry spells. I think one thing that when this all stuff starting, you have to stay home and all this, I thought, I'm going to get so much done, right? I'm going to compose every day.
Right.
But, that was almost like pressure to compose. So dealing with artistic dry spells, and you had kind of a way of dealing with that. So maybe share a little bit about that, and I might share some things too.
Well, yeah, I think everyone had that thought when we first got off is, wow, so much free time to compose.
Yeah, right.
And then it ended up not happening for most people. The reason, it's not that, everyone's lazy and we're just deciding not to do it. Being artistic, you need motivation, or people think that composers can sit down at the piano and just it comes out of them when we're normal people. Like I don't have those wizardry powers. But so really about being an artist during the Corona era is creating your own motivation. Visual artists do it when they do self-portraits or portraits, or they do landscapes and they have a landscape that they are portraying artistically. They create their own motivation. A lot of the time subjects are real people, or in modern art and pop art we see real companies and the whole like capitalist movement coming into the art scene. And so it's all about creating your own motivation, and I decided to take advantage of visual art to do that. People already, all these visual artists, I mean, specifically right now I'm talking about Dr. Seuss, they all created their own motivation, so I can use that same ideas that they had, to represent them musically. Some of that is just practicing composing, because the more time you have composing something, the better you're going to get at it. So a lot of that is just having an outlet to compose. But some of that, really the motivation to do it is because the finished product is just so successful and it's so awesome. For me specifically, as a composer who's interested in film, to see music used as a multimedia experience, as an audio-visual entertainment. I like having that outcome where you can tell a story and then you can point to the illustration.
Yeah, it's great. I think there's great chemistry too between those two art forms. Especially we're so visual. It's like this isn't a phone anymore, right? This is my own personal entertainment station, and all that. And we're so used to visual. But here, it's amazing that someone can sit there for 3 hours and watch Pirates of the Caribbean or Avengers movies, and a lot of that's like it's the music and the visual that's working together. So it's neat when you have just one still picture, and then the music kind of helps you explore that in an unusual way. And I like what you said about creating your own motivation.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly it, because for young composers, for everyone, for anyone who wants to make music, it's about, we have, as people, interests and things that we like watching and things that we like doing, and then we have composition. A lot of people say things, and they say, I really like watching a movie about Tiger King or whatever, and then I'm going to go play something on the piano. why not combine those interests? I'm really
Variations on Tiger King, Josh. It's waiting there for you.
yeah, like, come on, these ideas are just spilling out. And no, but if you have interest in something, like seriously, like the Tiger King thing was a joke, but if that's seriously something you're interested in, then you can represent anything musically, like anything. I can represent that lamp musically. You can, because everything has different aspects to it, and we have tools as musicians to represent those things.
That's great. Yeah, it's
So find your own motivation.
It's kind of magic. You know, you were talking about wizardry, but there is kind of a special magic to it, and like I said on this YouTube channel, we're always trying to dig into what makes it great, what makes it a great piece of music, and so. And creating your motivation, I found that definitely consistency has been key for me. It's like, you know, you're going to write something each day, even if you don't like it right away. You know,
Right.
just practice writing melodies. It's not writing a good melodies. Sometimes it just comes out, you know, but other times you really got to construct it, you know, and there's a lot of different things to it. And that's one thing that's great to, you know, to work with you on, because I get inspiration too from our lessons. You know, it's more collaborative than teaching piano, actually. So. Well, Joshua, thank you very much. And do you have any final words of wisdom or advice for young composers?
It's funny that I'm in a position to give advice to young composers when I am a young composer who needs advice. But no, I appreciate you exploring my perspective. And you were talking about the videos that you have where you analyze different pieces and what makes them so great. And those are seriously like some of the greatest videos on the internet. I watch them religiously because it's about seeing, wow, you know, these pieces are the ones that we look up to and the ones that are so good. And as a composer, what can I do to get there? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, analyzing music is just as important as knowing how to make it. So.
Yeah, studying the greats, the great masters, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you like this video, like, share, subscribe, click the notification bell. Joshua, thank you, and hopefully we'll have you back on the channel soon.
Yeah, thank you.